I have a very, very special guest in the building with me. I have Jackie Nunez in the building with me. We're going to sit here and chop it up a little bit. And we're going to talk about what she got going on. And we just going to have some fun because I want to introduce you guys, my audience here, to Jackie Nunez because she's going to bring something different, a Latin flavor to the station here at Gynesis Radio. So, Jackie, hello, how are you? How you doing today?
Well, hola, mi gente. This is Jackie Nunez, and this is an honor to be here with TPSquare. Actually, I'm enjoying this very much, and yes, I'm coming to Latinize you guys.
That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Well, you know, we like to serve the whole community. So it's our pleasure to have you join the team here, you know. And I was explaining your show to my partners over here at the radio station, you know, and I gave them the sample that you gave me and they all heard the show and everybody loved your format in your show, you know. So tell us a little bit about your format and what you do.
Well, everyone can do just a show, basically. So I always wanted to give a positive message, whether it's a topic or a theme. So each week I base it on something different and a positive message behind the theme. So it's not just, and the songs are actually to enhance that theme or about that theme or something that will basically hit home for the person. Because considering the times we're going through, a peril today between, you know, all the bad things that are happening, you want to be you want to be distracted from that and you want something positive, because as long as it's positive, it definitely makes the day go better, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. You know, we need a breath of fresh air right now in these trying times right here. Absolutely. Especially here in America. We got so much going on socially, politically, and with this pandemic, you know, so anything to take our mind away from all that drama is a pleasure. It's a breath of fresh air, you know.
It sure is. And then, of course, if there is a message behind it, it also helps you think about it and say, hey, what could I do to change things? Not sit down and say, oh, everything is so bad. What can we collectively do to help our situation get better? Because it's not going to get better until we put all our parts.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, as the old saying was, it takes a village, you know, and it clearly takes a village, you know, to and it's just not with raising your children. In anything that we do, it takes a village. You know, we all got to work collectively together to make things come together for the common good, you know, and I think collectively that's what we do. And one of the things that we do here at Gynesis Radio, we try to bring everything together, you know, for the common good. You know, we like to have great talk shows and good music, you know, and we're constantly evolving, you know, and we're always adding something to Gynesis Radio to, you know, enhance what we offer our listening public, you know, and that's very important. So, Jackie, how long have you been doing radio?
Oh, it feels like forever. I didn't particularly always have a show. I produced shows. I worked in advertising. So I actually worked in the recording industry before radio. Even when we were back in analog, we went analog to digital. So I remember recording on the 2-inch tapes and the 24 track. You remember all that?
Yeah, the more reel-to-reels, yeah.
And even pressing some vinyl.
Oh, geez, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But there was a certain sound about vinyl that you don't get on digital, although they have been warming it up, as they say.
Hey, it's coming back.
It's coming back.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
Some things are just worth coming back.
It's coming back.
It's coming back. Sound, you just reminiscent to yesteryear that you need to have it back.
Hey, listen, you know, one thing that I miss with the old vinyl is when the record was nice and warm You hear that old staticky crackling, and
That's
that,
right.
you knew it was going to be a hit record that was going to be played, because if you heard that little staticky crackling on that record,
That means they were playing it over and over and over again.
that's right, and that's what happened when you bring those old records back, and I appreciate that a lot. I worked at Atlantic Records for a while, and so I know exactly what you mean. You said you worked in the industry. I had quite a bit some time in at Atlantic Records, and it was good while it lasted. I stuck around until they decided they was going to go into a different direction with their music, and I decided that it was time for me to move on, and because I just couldn't stick around and do something I didn't believe in.
Well, a lot of these companies like Atlantic, Capital EMI, BMI, all these major record labels came into Sony, or some bigger company always takes these companies, and a lot of the artists can actually fall through the cracks.
Oh yeah.
Because their focus is on whatever they're focusing on, and then it's kind of sad if you think about it, because they're could be very talented artists, and they're forgotten about. And we know a lot of them. There's so much talent out there, and you wonder how so many artists are forgotten about, very talented, but their music may not be as commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not be what the label is looking for. Doesn't mean that they're not talented or have, great talent in their own rights. But at the end of the day, you need to expose them more, because they deserve it.
Well, actually, with music, I'm from the era of catering to subcultures, and you can sell 1 million records to a subculture in itself and never really get any radio play.
So true.
So I come from that era. Like, for instance, there was a lot of house music that, sold millions of copies, and house music, as you know, is a subculture. That's something that was a New York, New Jersey, Baltimore, Chicago type of sound. It really didn't cross over the entire country, but it still was a moneymaker, and just like hip hop, rap music, they thought it would never cross over and it would never make anybody any money. But, one of the biggest genres of music today is what we call hip hop. Latin music was always considered a subculture, and it's a billion-dollar industry, so I come from that era of catering to those subcultures and, doing outreach to those subcultures and those people and putting the product in front of them. And I enjoy breaking new artists. That was one of the best things that I ever did. I like getting behind a new artist, getting behind their music, and giving that push and introducing it to the world. It's something special about that. And for me, that was something that I just couldn't walk away from. And when Atlantic Records came in and they said, well, we're moving in a different direction, this is what we want, this is where we going, and I just couldn't do it. It didn't feel good, didn't sit right with me.
It doesn't feel right. More than likely it isn't right, but it, like you said, it takes a different direction. Obviously not the direction you would have liked to see. And I've seen that happen a lot. I've seen that happen a lot in Sony. When I did a lot of the licensing, it's a different world out there. I think the only advantage we have today, in actuality, with social mediums, with all different platforms, is that there is the possibility of more exposure, and of course seeing more independent artists. But have it not been for that, where would those guys be today?
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right with that. Where would they be? You are right. You know, um,
I've seen, I mean, I come from the jazz and Latin. I've worked with many of the jazz and Latin greats. And I mean, what I enjoyed about working with these people was the humility. And they were just regular people and they've gone through some hard times. But because of where they came from, made them so great.
mhm.
Because without them, they're the ones who opened the doors for the artists for today.
Oh yeah,
And
without a doubt.
without them, there is no music as far as I'm concerned. But they are the ones who open the doors for the newer artists today to be as creative as they are.
That's right. You 100% right. But a lot of people just miss the mark. You
Oh,
know,
definitely.
a lot of people have just missed the mark. So you told me that you do something once a month.
Yes, I do an oldie show for the community. I do an oldie show once a month. I've been doing it for about 14 years now, or minus the pandemic year, right? So it's actually, we do doo-wop, R&B, little rock and roll, little mix, and we'll throw in some Latin there. But overall, it's doo-wop because it's all about the harmonies. We love harmonies. So, and a cappella.
Hmm.
So, and of course, this is the founding music of R&B, or we have R&B to thank for these a cappella, for these sounds that came from the streets.
Hmm.
And I just thought I didn't want that music to die, so I incorporated that in the shows every month because the truth is we need to keep the music alive.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And I gotta tip my hat that I done took off to you because a lot of people don't realize what we do to keep the music alive, to keep it going, because a lot of those artists that were out there doing that doo-wop, a lot of them are still alive today, you know.
Yes, I mean, we do have a lot of the originals or legendary people that are leaving us, like most artists. But the thing is, I managed, or we managed, to try to keep that music alive because that is like the what they call doo-wop is considered the grandfather of the R&B today, or hip hop today.
Hmm.
And I believe that they deserve that recognition. I
Yeah,
mean, the harmonies are great. Where else do you get the harmonies that you get, like from doo-wop?
that's right. You don't, In fact, up here at the Sherman Theater here in Stroudsburg, they do doo-wop shows up here from time to time, and people come out. They come out to see those doo-wop shows, man. You know.
Yeah, I had a tribute show just recently. A gentleman by the name Willie Winfield of the Harp Tones.
Hmm.
Um, he had a hit song called Sunday Kind of Love, Foolish Me, The Shrine of Saint Cecilia. There are many other hits that he had, but he brought so much into his harmonies. They were just amazing, very tight harmonies. And he just passed away, and he was a dear friend. And it was just a couple of years prior, I had a tribute to a black writer named Billy Dawn Smith. Very special person and very dear to me. He wrote over 800 songs.
Wow,
And
that's impressive.
yes, didn't get the acknowledgement as he should have. But back in the 50s, 60s, it was very hard for a black writer to get any recognition, even the groups, as you know.
In fact, the gentleman who wrote that song, 16 Candles, he was here at Gynesis Radio I want to say right before the pandemic. And
Did
he,
you meet JT Carter?
yes, I did. He actually lives up here.
Oh, he does.
He lives up
Okay.
here. Yes, he does. He lives up here.
Yes, he's the only original of the crest.
Yes, yes. And and he told his story. And one of the things that I wanted to do with him, I wanted to document his story, because I told him that, there's so many people who don't know that story, because everybody know that song 16 Candles, right? And they know who sang the song,
Right.
but they didn't know who wrote the song, or who originally sang that song, who that song was for. They know the commercial version of it,
Do you know who was doing the background on that song, 16 Candles?
No, who's doing the background?
There was a woman named Patricia Vandross. I guess you know who her brother was.
Pat. Well,
The
that's
woman's name is Patricia Vandross.
Mhm.
Her younger brother used to run around the studio
hmm
when she was recording that. I believe she was about 16 years old, and the parents didn't really want her traveling with the group. But she is on the recording, and her younger brother was Luther Vandross.
Well, I got a little ditty for you. Where's it at? Oh, it's down. It fell. It's not on the wall. But Pat is my cousin.
No way.
And Luther Vandross is my cousin. To us, he was Ronnie, but that's my cousin.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Interesting.
My father and his
So
mother
I'm telling
are
you
cousins.
something you don't already know.
Yeah, how about that? It's a small world. Again, we were talking about how small the world is. Small world, absolutely. Yes. How about that? How about that? And Ronnie went on to become, world renowned. I think one of the greatest crooners in the world, not because we're related, but, just in talent alone, and one of the things that I really appreciated, as I got older, that Ronnie did was he always kept the old music alive. Every album that he made, he remade an old song that he made his own, and he kept that going up until his last album.
Wasn't he instrumental in My Juanita? I think he was one of the writers of My Juanita. It wasn't Billy Dawn, although Billy was the producer. Because with Johnny Maestro and the Crest, he has about 16 songs. 2 that were produced, and the rest were written for the group.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? Over here at Gynesis Radio, so many people have come through these doors over here. So much has happened over here at Gynesis, and that's one of the beautiful things, like where it all begins, right here at Gynesis Radio, and it's a pleasure to sit here and talk with you.
Thank you.
And to say that we're going to add your Latin flavor to the station here, Tell us a little bit more about your Latin show that you're doing.
I decided to do, because a lot of the music, as you know, as we spoke about doo-wop, a lot of the forgotten music, if you will, I like to even incorporate a lot of boogaloo, because there was a whole era with the boogaloo, except it kind of died, like just flat out died. But the reason for that was the actual purist, if you will, the Tito Puentes and the Eddie Palmieris and a lot of the actual greats, Machito, Tito Rodriguez. These were people that recorded boogaloo, but these are the same people that killed it, because it became so prevalent and it became so popular that it was highly requested in the clubs to play. So the virtue of our music was always in salsa, son montuno, mambo, as they called it back then. They wanted to keep it to the true form. And so they actually just wanted the DJs not to play it. But as history will always repeat itself, Boogaloo came back with a vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
But it is such beautiful music that we have. The Latin music actually is Afro-Cuban, so we have R&B to thank for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's such the language itself, it's a beautiful language. It's very poetic.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, it's more bilingual because if you hear a lot about music, they're putting English into it so that it could come across, actually the music is global, whether you understand it or not,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the sentiment behind it, it's the feeling,
Right.
it's the music itself. So I enjoy it because it speaks to us. I enjoy it because I add a theme to it, a topic, and a message, and
Mm-hmm.
always a positive message at that, because music to me should be positive. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there really should be negative music, but again, that's just my opinion. I understand that music is basically what speaks when we cannot talk, when we don't have the words to say. That's where music comes in.
Well, music to me makes the world go round.
Absolutely.
The world would be empty without music. I mean, we need the rhythm of music to, it's just like water flowing. You never know where it's going to take you, never know where it's going to go, and I just love music to a point where when I was a kid growing up, not that I was psychic or anything, I knew that my life would revolve around music. It started, being as young as I could possibly remember. My dad had me around instruments and musics. You know, I can still remember banging on pots. You know,
I think we all did that. Right?
I can still remember banging on pots, and beating on the table, and just taking string and trying to create my own guitar, and playing with rubber bands to make sound. And I've always been around music. Even to being in the music ministry as a child in church. It's always been music. And music is what makes my world go around. And I think it's music that soothes the soul.
Absolutely. My father was the one who basically introduced me to the music world, growing up with the big band,
Mm-hmm.
the big band era, and then of course jazz
Mm-hmm.
and Latin music. So that's where I have my beginnings. He used to book bands. We used to throw dances, and I would help him get the bands or do more of the contract side of it. But I learned a lot through him. And I was pretty amazed how much he knew of the history of music,
Mm-hmm.
because he was never one to talk to anybody about it. But he'd sit there and he would tell me the who's who. And it was just amazing. I learned so much from him. I decided to take it a step further. That's when I went into the recording industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with several labels, worked with 2 major recording studios. We've recorded the best of them, from doo-wop to rock and roll, and of course Latin and jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the best experience ever.
Do you remember the old Casablanca records?
Yes.
Yeah, how about that? A lot of people don't remember, but that's what Tommy Mottola started at, Casablanca.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, how about that? How about when you talked about big bands, it made me think of the old Dr. Buzzard's original Savannah band, Corey Day and them. Remember them?
Yes.
You know what? They were part of the tail end of the disco era, but they brought back that big band flavor.
That's right.
Kid Creole and the Coconuts, because
Absolutely.
they was the same group. Dr. Buzz's original Savannah band and Kid Creole and the Coconuts, they was actually the same group. And when I think about those songs like that, that sound, you know, and I believe that I'm going back to about 1977 or 78 when that album came out. Uh, Dr. Buzz's Original Savannah Band, that first album, that Shay Shay LaFar album.
Yes.
And as soon as I heard the sound of the big band playing, and it didn't really fit in with radio at the time, but it was something about that sound.
That dance, the disco, the
Yeah.
dance thing.
Yeah.
I think it was Giorgio Moroder.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that did that big band sound, but more contemporary.
Yeah.
And I know I was a dancer back then, so I was like loving it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I danced from everything from ballet, tap, jazz, and of course I was like in a million competitions for the hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it because it was it's music that had so much energy.
Yeah, well, see, it's funny because here in New York we called it the hustle, but everywhere else in the country they called it hand dancing.
Hand dance, interesting.
Yeah, everywhere else in the country they called it hand dancing. But yeah. Well,
I guess you know where you come from when you said the hustle, right? Obviously New York.
Absolutely. New York has its own flavor of its own. It has its own stamp that it puts on music, and just pop culture in itself it's really just within the last, I want to say, the last 20 years that pop culture has really broadened its horizon and got away from New York. Within the last 20, 25 years, because New York City was the standard for music, for anything, and although you had a lot of music coming out of California, but it was just a carbon copy of what they were doing in New York.
Well, I think the East Coast, New York, Philadelphia, especially Philadelphia, has its own sound. Then you have the West Coast sound.
Yeah.
Totally two different sounds, but great.
Great. Well, listen, the sounds of Philadelphia, oh my God, great music came out of Philly. Great, Leon Huff and them guys, Gambling Huff, unbelievable what they put out, unbelievable sound that came out of Philadelphia. MFSB, unbelievable. And then, within the last 25, 30 years, then you had the Southern sound, and then you had the music from the Bay Area. A lot of people don't realize that funk music actually came out of the Bay Area of California. That's where the funk came from. A lot of people don't realize that, but that's where all your funk came from. They thought James Brown had the brand new funk. Yeah, well, he had his flavor of funk, but the real funk bands came from the Bay Area out there.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a student of music. I've done my homework, and I've had the privilege of traveling the country, and in some instances the world, with different groups and artists. And I always want to take me to the underground music spots. Take me where the music at. I want to go where the real musicians are. Take me to that little seedy place, hole in the wall.
Little underground areas.
Yeah.
That's where they really get down.
Oh, yeah.
Some great musicians there.
Oh, yeah. In fact, there's a gentleman from the UK that would come here every year. He would come here like around September, October every year. He would come to the United States, and he would go to places like the Village Underground and all those places like that to recruit American acts, new artists, unsigned acts, and he would take them and break them in the UK. And what he would do is he would meet them September, October in New York City, and then he would book them for shows. They had these weekender things that they do. He would book them for shows in the UK. That would kick off like around March and April of the following year. And he would take them out there and break them as new artists. And that was his contribution to breaking American artists in the UK, and it always went over well, you know. And he would every year he would come in, him and his partners would come here and meet these new artists and tell them, oh, well, we're gonna make you a star in the UK. And some cases it really worked out, you know, it really worked out. But you know, music is great. Music is
Oh,
great.
absolutely. I've actually asked people on the air, or just in general, you know, when you do those like trivial questions, I've had a person say to me, well, you know, I'm quite the historian, and you know, there isn't anything you can't tell me that I don't know about music. So I challenged the person one day and I said, okay, what non-Latino person has recorded more Spanish songs than any top Latin entertainer today?
Hmm.
And that was Nat King Cole.
Hmm. How about that?
Interesting, right? Coming from the big band era, he
Absolutely.
recorded so many albums in Spanish. It's amazing.
Absolutely. How about that? I didn't know that. You know, I know he had one or two. I didn't know it was to that extent.
Yes, he has been.
But when I think back on it, there was always a Latin version of the R&B songs that went
Yes.
out. You know,
Yes.
like for instance, Joe Patan. You know,
Well, he incorporated the R&B sound, the rock, well, you got to understand one thing about Joe Bataan, very good friend of mine, by the way. But
we did some shows up here with him also.
so the thing is, Joe had to, as he's known for, think outside the box. Because while Fania had all the Latin greats, he has to compete to people like the Tito Puentes, the Tito Rodriguez. Well, he wasn't on Fania, but the Machitos, all the Hector Lavoe, Willie Colon. So all these people are actually the whole beginning of Fania and how Fania blew up. So he couldn't just stay with, it was either that or move on, because they weren't exactly welcoming his idea of incorporating all different sounds together. And I think that's what sets Joe apart from the rest of them, because he incorporated all kinds of music into one.
Oh, yes, he did.
Even when you would think maybe the industry wasn't ready for it, but the people were. They embraced it.
Well, that's why he sold a lot of records.
Sure does, and still does.
Yeah, yeah.
Does.
And he's still he's still out here gigging, doing shows.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, the annual R&B concerts that we were doing up here, and that still goes on here. It's actually going to be one in December here. Lincoln Systems and Voice Distributions is doing up at Kalahari, and he's performed on quite a few of those shows, Joe Patan, and very talented, very, very talented. You know what? He was one of those artists that whatever your flavor of music was, he had a song for you.
Yes, he sure did. And once he left Fania, he also created Ghetto Records, which was pretty big, especially out west. And then South Soul Records, which obviously were very popular in the 70s. But he's always thinking. He's an innovator. He's always taking a sound and expanding on it.
And see, that goes back to what we were talking about when we were on our way to the station today, when we talk about being a visionary. You know, he is the definite definition of a visionary. He was able to see the forest from the trees and say, okay, we have A, B, C, and D, but I need to make E, F, and G to bring it all home together and make it complete. And that's what he did.
Well, he also kept it real. He took the where he came from, where he was raised. He took those bad times and made music out of it. Told the story. And he's always telling a story, and that's what's interesting about it. And again, I know Fania Records was his beginnings, but he grew from that and thought outside the box and created music that I think since till today, he's basically one of the founders of all these mixed music, including rap, because he did have a song called Rappo Clappo. So he is one of the innovators to a lot of what hip hop does today, what rap does today, what Latin does today, rock and roll, R&B. So he has a flavor of it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I don't think there's anyone like him.
No, one of a kind.
Most definitely.
And not only that, he's a great human being.
He sure is.
He's a great individual. Because, doing these concerts, I used to be the guy that, I ran the stage, so when the guys came in to do the sound check and everything else and all that stuff, I made sure the show went off without a hitch, and a lot of these artists that would come through, they would have a little chip on their shoulder and whatever. And, I have to always remind them that sound check is not rehearsal. It's just sound check, But Joe Patan, every time we did a show with him, he came through, he was always a professional,
Absolutely.
He was always ready to go, and
well, he's like, he's so experienced with this. He'll even know before you.
He'll
know what to do.
Yeah, he's like, this is what he does. Like, come on, Joe, jump in there and do your thing.
Although I'm proud to say I caught him and had him surprised. He said in many of his interviews, no one really asked him about a particular song that, it is so powerful, this song. The lyrics, it really hits home. And it's called My Opera. If you actually listen to the lyrics of that song, brings you to a deep, dark place.
Well, tell us about that song.
Well, the song, it describes that his mom or the lady is blind and she's trying to raise 9 children. So one of the younger sister, the baby, fell and apparently died. So he took the fault for it. He said it was his fault. So he was put away in an asylum. He had to convince them that he was the crazy one so that his mother wouldn't take the rap for, what happened to the child.
Wow.
But you really, like I said, you have to listen to how he describes it. Because, again, it's so hurtful and it's so emotional that when I asked him about the song, he said, like, wow, that really brings me back. But he said at the time he wanted to really bring his audience. He wants to connect. And that song connected with a lot of people. And I want to thank Duel Navarez for that, because he was the one who actually, he has an orchestra called Orquesta Navarez, and he was on the Fania Records. So anyway, he was the one who actually told me about that song. And when I listened to it, I did approach Joe with the song and I took him by surprise. But he said at the time he wanted to really connect to people and talk about things that are happening in the neighborhood. Obviously, things in his life, growing up, being surrounded by gangs, drugs. So he spoke about, in each of his songs, basically, he talks about life experiences. And it brings you back because it says the realism of what's going on. And in reality, those songs still can be related to today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, that's the beauty of music. You can tell your story and you can right or wrong. You can fix any situation. You can take a sad situation and make it happy.
Absolutely.
You know, you can be up, go down. You can go in. You can take music can take you through any emotional phase in your
I
life.
think it takes you through all emotions.
Absolutely.
Because, but I
Absolutely.
guess that's a good thing. Then you know that it's taking effect.
Absolutely.
It's doing exactly what it was intended to do.
Absolutely. Well, look, Jackie, we're gonna take a quick break.
Okay.
We're gonna pay some bills. We're going to jump back in this thing here with you here. I'm enjoying this interview right here with Jackie
Thank you.
Nunez
It's a
right here
pleasure.
on the TPSquare show here at Gynesis Radio. So y'all sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Don't go nowhere. DJ Dutchy Bang gonna play a couple songs for y'all. I'm gonna go out and pay a couple bills, and I'm gonna come back. All right, y'all. So we'll be right back.